your work in national security has parallels in market intelligence practice for private enterprises, right? And certainly, many of those skills are transferable between public and private enterprises. For example, what kind of advice would you offer to those who want to learn more about horizon scanning? Actually, where can we go to learn more?
Well, in a sort of pure basic way, there are various tools for horizon scanning, but I'll give you something that it isn't off the wall, but I think it advances someone's understanding a lot further. So you have that basic kind of or fundamental or foundational knowledge in horizon scanning and plenty of tools that one can use. The thing that I would say is I would urge anyone who was really interested in horizon scanning to look at two things. The first thing is what's known as systems thinking. So systems thinking looks at non-linear, so doesn't look at a problem as being linear, doesn't look at a development of a society, for example, as linear. It looks at it in terms of being a system in which there are emergent properties. And from that emergent properties, it's like the complexity of it generates an emergent property. And from that, I think you can see far more clearly the sort of value utility of friction and how friction in society then develops and sort of progresses. And from that perspective, you then get some really nice and interesting horizon scanning possibilities, like particularly in my field. So there's a book by a guy called Peter Turchin called Ultra Society that is a really good and accessible version of this. I'd urge anyone to read it. It's fascinating stuff. The second thing is really around looking to probabilistic thinking. So to understand, to cast forward, and I think this is where it relates to markets. So when we look at, how a particular stock or how an ETF might develop in the future, be that a 12-month timeline or, 5-year timeline, we might give it some plausible narratives. We might be able to cast forward. So we might go back 2 years and think about Tesla, for example, and how that would develop over this 2-year period. Could we have predicted that it would, outgrow many of the other car manufacturers, even bigger than Volkswagen, for example, in the EU? We might have been able to, and we might have been able to plot those divergent kind of pathways. But the crucial thing is to have understood probabilistic thinking, to have been able to say, these are the possibilities, and we can create a common framework for saying, this is more likely, this is highly likely, this is as near to certain as we can be, so that we can actually have that common lingua franca between maybe it's colleagues, maybe it's a wider interest group that we might be in, so that actually that we can converse and debate in a way that has a common platform. And in that way, you can essentially crowdsource or curate in a more sophisticated way those possible horizon scanning opportunities. So I suppose that what I'm saying to you is I think there are many fundamentals of horizon scanning, but those are the ones I think would provide anyone interested in that a considerable amount of value added.